Bon, bah écoutez, bonsoir à tous. Je ne sais pas si vous m'entendez tous bien, surtout les gens qui sont en ligne. Alex, est-ce que tu peux me confirmer qu'on l'entend? Bon, très bien. Bah écoutez, merci à tous d'être venus ce soir. J'ai vu la liste des participants exceptionnellement. Je pense qu'on a beaucoup plus de monde qui sont en ligne, en webinar que sur place. Je ne sais pas si c'est lié au virus ou pas, mais bon, en tout cas, voilà. Donc, je ferai un peu plus attention aux personnes qui sont en ligne pour m'assurer que vous restez connectés et que vous entendez toujours bien. Et s'il y a un problème et que vous m'entendez plus, n'hésitez pas à le dire et les personnes de la chambre, notamment Alex, me le dira immédiatement. Donc, pour I'm going to shift in English. I just started in French for the audience, but so welcome to this event. For people who don't know me, my name is Alban Renaud. I'm a foreign lawyer registered with the Chinese Ministry of Justice for already about 15 years, but I'm in China. I work for a firm whose name is originally Adamas. We changed actually the name of a firm at the beginning of the year to Adaltis because we acquired some extra law firm in France, so we got bigger. So my partners in France decided to change the name. Tonight, this evening, I'm gonna talk to you about one topic, which is the legal liabilities of key executive and senior management. It is actually a sensitive topic, but it is also a topic for which we have often a lot of questions. It's a very broad topic. This evening, we have maybe 1 hour to discuss about it. We can, of course, extend to answer the question you will have, but it's, again, a quite broad topic. It's not possible to cover everything at once, but at least at the end of this presentation, I wish you have a global understanding and you know what you need to be careful of, either that you feel your liability might be engaged or that you have to take internal measure to avoid it. I ask today to join me to speak together one of my colleagues in the office, lawyer Xu. She's from Xu Weijing. She's from our office. She's a criminal lawyer. She has been practicing here for a long time. Criminal law is our only focus, but she does a lot of things for compliance, and we work often on sensitive cases. I thought it was quite useful to have someone today to talk about this part, because too often as business lawyer, we talk about administrative, we talk about civil things, but criminal part, it's actually something which is very risky, which imply a lot of complicated situation and could be quite dramatic. And even we don't want to reach that, it's important to know how it works and what to do when it happens. So let's start our topic. I divided it in 4 parts. First, I will explain to you what is the general and specific civil and administrative liability. Then my colleague will discuss about the criminal part. Then I will explain to you how we try to reduce the potential risk. And then I will still have just 1 or 2 words about the social credit, because on the top of everything that happens, social credit is now a reality in China. So when we discuss about key executive and senior management, who are we talking about? By principle, all of you know the legal representative is among them. I did not list it here because the legal representative will be either a director or a general manager. Generally speaking, the law, and is the company law, defined the key executive person as director, supervisor, and then senior management are the general manager, deputy general manager, person in charge of the finance, and well, let's not mention listed company, because for foreign enterprise, not much are listed, to be honest, in China. But for every other personnel stipulated in the article of association. That's the base, at least for the company law. But it's not because you are not listed in this category of people that you may not be considered as a senior manager, a key executive, or someone responsible. We will see it a bit later, but at least I think you can easily sometimes identify yourself as one of these persons. 2 types of liabilities I'm going to explain about civil and administrative one. General liabilities are the general rules that are applicable just because you already have a position. It's kind of what are your duties and what do you risk just by having your duties. Then I will explain to you a bit more and give you some example of some specific rules that can apply to each industry sectors and for which you will be liable because you are key executive or senior management. So what does the law say about and the company law? Company law is very simple. It gives basically two main duties to the senior management, the director and supervisor. First is the duty of fidelity and duty of due diligence. And then other general requirements. I will discuss it a bit later. What are these obligations? Because when I realize I discuss with clients about this topic, they have no idea they have these two duties. They even don't know them. Duty of fidelity is not defined by the law, but there is a, I would say, negative example of what is forbidden to do, or the kind of action you are not supposed to realize. They concern the funds, the property, transaction, business opportunity, confidentiality. Some of them seem very obvious, but it's very important to know that sometimes when you are doing some things, even discussing about business opportunities, when you take some risk to disclose confidential information, or to accept some commission of some transaction, or even if you violate by accident the article of association, or some internal rules of a company, you will breach this obligation of fidelity, and you will engage your responsibility. The second responsibility is the obligation of due diligence. Due diligence is basically an obligation of care, of good care. It's not defined. The question is, okay, how do we determine if I'm taking care correctly of a company and what we're doing? Generally speaking, you have to be reasonable, to be fair when you apply the stipulation by law. Okay, but that's great, but in practice, what does it mean? So am I duty fulfilled or not? That's actually a key question. When you have a capital contribution, you're a director of a company, and your shareholder did not pay the capital contribution on time. Just one example, but that's your obligation to tell them you should do that. If they don't do that, if you don't tell them, you're already in breach of this obligation. So you already just by that, lack to your basic obligation to remind your shareholder what they should do. And sometimes it's really, it happens very often that director will not tell the shareholder what they have to do. But be clear that you may have a responsibility toward creditor and toward other people if one day there is a problem in the company and the company has not been funded properly. Other simple example, if you are CFO or very CFO in your company and there is no financial statement or they are not made really properly, that's something that's to be done for every company, need to be take care very carefully. Normally financial statements are still made, but there is one, to be honest, I saw so many companies when we do the M&A due diligence, we realize they never do that. They are, for example, the minutes of the board of shareholders, or even they don't have shareholders meeting. I don't know how many of you have a board of director. They are directors, and how many of you have held the board of director, and even you have the board, how many of you have the minutes? And if tomorrow we come and we say, okay, where are the minutes of the board? And you will say, well, we don't have any binder, we don't have anything. That's also a breach of your obligation. So just to point these elements, they don't look to be very serious, but at the end they can have very high consequences. And for board of director, keep in mind that if you take some decisions and board resolution and they are even not properly recorded, how can you define who has voted for what decision and who is responsible for what? That's a key issue, because at the end of the day, there is a problem. That's the liability of all the directors that will be issued by the authority or by other creditors. Generally speaking, also, there is an obligation of cooperation with a shareholder for shareholders meeting with supervisor. I don't know how many of you know who is the supervisor of a company, how often the supervisor take action or do things, or that you inform the supervisor of the situation of a company. Very often the position of supervisor is forgotten. People either take the position and don't act as a supervisor, and they just put a name of someone on the paper, or even when the supervisor asks some question, no one answer, no one pay attention to him. But again, that's also a breach of duties. Of course, not to compete with a company during employment, that's a bit basic, but in China, it's happened also very often. So even keep in mind, if you have some colleagues or employees, they start to have separate business on the side, competing the business of a company, they are also in breach of their basic duties as senior management. And in general, and is look to be in general not important, but observe the laws and regulation and AOA article of association of a company, knowing that the most important sentence here and the most important point here is the regulations of a company, because that's the regulation inside of a company that will define who is internally responsible of that. And if you start to do not have these rules, then you can never decide who is responsible. It means at the end of the day, it's always the legal representative who is responsible of everything. And if you don't respect them, you're definitively in breach of your obligation. That's really key issue. And we will see a bit after where could be the serious matters, because these are old company law general rules, but after you have more serious regulation on that. If you fail your duty, you are liable for a lot of things. I think the most important thing, or two most important points, of course, is not so much the company will have if you have illegal gain, that's fine. I mean, of course, it's an issue, but that's minor. But if you see like the director or senior management will have to compensate the company if they are in breach of their duties, that's a real issue. Because depending the action you take, even if you're in good faith, you could breach by accident your duty by forgotten to do something that you are supposed to do, but you even don't know that you're supposed to do it. If, for example, you forget to take the minutes of a board of director, you have important decisions who are taken. It has some decision for investment. The investment is not made or is made, and they have some accident. Then people are gonna say who decided to make or not to make this investment. Who is responsible for that? So consequences can be quite high. Also, one point, once you have an issue here or problem, especially for bankruptcy, never put a company in bankruptcy situation in China. Try to avoid it. This is the last thing you want to do. You will be prevent to occupy in the future some top management positions. So the consequences for you could be actually quite high. I don't go into the details for that, but actually that's a major issue. And that will impact your career, even you try to change the job, because basically you will be blacklisted. Now let's go to some specific regulation of liabilities to have just some extra idea. Because what I explained to you, again, we have general rules apply for every company, but every sector has its own specific issues. And if you check, for example, very basic thing, you could check regulation of self-production just for factories. Construction is also a lot of rules for architecture, design, tendering and bidding, tax. I like the tax because it's always is concerned by tax and the consequences are always serious. Food safety. We had in the past a lot of change in the food safety law with a huge number of sanctions is quite high. Cosmetics. I put also cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, I mean, if you are not compliant, if you have some cyber breach, could be also have huge consequence. And of course, if the violation of this regulation are quite serious, then you end up criminal. My colleague will discuss about it. Some example for you to be also clear about it. When we discuss, for example, for self-production, the law say the specific regulation on that will say who is responsible. Main responsible person will be maybe the actual controller, the members of decision-making organs, senior management personnel, head of department. That could be potentially the people responsible. What kind of act? Well, production entity is not equipped with safety production condition. That's actually something if you don't make the right investment. Same if you, for example, fail to main responsible person in charge of production, you fail to take the right measure. If you have some accident. So let's be clear here. If we check the first line, who is responsible? But that's depend what you define internally in the company. What we find most of the time is it's not defined in the company or it's not properly defined. So who will be arrested or who will be targeted is there is an issue. First, that's the legal representative. Then that's the people of the board. Then that's, of course, the general manager before the people of the board, depending on the kind of decision he can take. And then only it will be the people in charge of a unit or it will be the people directly in charge. But if these rules are not clearly stated or written, then directly it's the liability and responsibility remain at the top of the management. So think of the organization of a structure you have or in which you are, And you can think clearly, oh, if we have issue in this kind of a regulation, who is in charge? Who is responsible? Is it clearly say this person is responsible or not? Then if you have some issue here, just example of individual liability you may face directly as a senior management. So 5 years of lifespan to assume any position. Well, why not? You have to change your job or at least change the industry. Fine up to 100% of your annual income of a preceding year. That quite be quite a lot, to be honest. It's 1 year of full salary or more if you have more. Suspension, revocation of qualification, demotion, or removal from office. Well, okay. You can see it quite serious, and with financial sanction, and basically you are totally off the work for a long time. Other example, I talk about construction. So not everyone is in construction, but if you are doing anything like building factory, designing, because design is also part of construction, you will be also in this kind of regulation. Generally speaking, it's the people who say directly in charge of the other responsible person. Here is again, the definition of a responsible person is very wide and is not clearly defined by the law. It means it could be anyone. But if no one is clearly mentioned, if you don't have a proper organization in the company, it means it start again, legal representative, general manager, people of the board, and all the top executive. So you have to be very careful with that. And then the fine actually could be quite high because it would be 5 to 10% of a fine imposed to the company. So company will normally can accept a big fine, but if as an individual you have to receive 10% of a company fine, is actually quite high. Then you have also some extra administrative sanction and other liabilities. Tax is something I like because you never know if the tax are properly paid in your company when you run it. You believe it is because you trust your CFO, you trust your office manager, you trust the people under you, and you think yeah, it should be done properly. Let's imagine only one day it happened, but it's not well done, or this person leave, and you realize suddenly the tax bureau come and say there are some issues. There is one person who is concerned, only one is really the winner, the lucky guy is the legal representative. So tax is really for the legal representative. So whoever is legal representative, really make sure the taxes are properly paid. Basically, the sanction is you are not going to leave China without paying the tax. That's not going to happen. So don't think suddenly, and what happened is on the 21st of December, I mean, you used to, maybe not nowadays, but you used to go to the airport. Yeah. Well, normally they will look for the person acting legal rep, but on the paper it will be also punished because I did not put all the sanction, but it will have more issues. But it's true that if, I mean, I cannot, you have to consider if you have an issue here, how do you manage it or not a bit in advance before the issue come to you. And if you, when we find the issue out is most of the time when people go to the airport on the 21st of December to go back to Europe for Christmas, and then at the custom, the immigration officer tell the person, I'm sorry, you have to present yourself to this authority or to the police in this place, and you cannot leave China. That's how it works. And then you are like, so, sorry, what's the matter? What's happening? And say, I cannot tell you, go to see this authority. And that's how you get blocked and the trouble starts. Other issue, tendering and bidding. The number of bid we answer for client or we assist, especially to work with government, is really high. Not just for construction, but even for software supply, a lot of things. You will often have this kind of situation happening. Now, the key question is, do you have any collusion between the bidding, I mean, your company and between the tender? Normally, it will be the local authority. And does the salespeople from your side, what are they organizing together? Because the consequence may be quite high for the management personnel or people directly in charge. You have some risk here of corruption for which you have to be very careful. And you have to be clear that your teams, they respect the law and they don't do bad thing in your back, and the responsibility is again well organized. That's how actually this kind of regulation has been also applied to put in jail from the top management, top to the bottom, saying all of you were involved and responsibility were not clear, so we took everyone. You have also quite a high fine in this kind of situation, administrative sanction. But the most important is make sure your commercial team respect the rules. Sometimes it's better not to win a bid instead to win a bid in an illegal way and then to have this kind of issue because it's cost really high. And then if you do a really bad thing, then criminal. So waiting.
Okay, thank you so much. It's really nice to meet you here. And thank you for the invitation from Alban. My name is Ariel. I'm a criminal lawyer. Our team specializes in criminal law. And personally, I do more criminal defense. And actually, we are quite famous in this field. Moreover, we also accumulate a lot of experience to defend for foreigners. Actually, I defend for French people before, but it's a long story. I will talk later. I don't want to scare you. But if a foreigner, if you involved in a criminal case in China, you will find it's really hard to find an English-speaking criminal lawyer. And I know there are only a few criminal lawyers who have the abroad work or study experience, and most of them are in our team. So in this aspect, we think we are quite special. So let's move to our first topic. When company involves in a criminal case, so people will always think criminal cases are really far from us. Of course, that's not true. So why? That's why I'm here. Because here in China, we have a very different criminal system from Western country. I think it's really important for people to know the game rules here because you're already working here. So I think this topic will be a good example to let you know the difference between the legal system as well as the criminal risks in company business. So here are two legal articles in Chinese criminal law. You know, Alban just mentioned that the company will have a lot of fine in criminal case, but who cares? It's company fine, right? But actually, most senior management in China, they don't know that the Chinese criminal law adopt double punishment system on company crime, which means when a company involves in a criminal case, both company and directly responsible person will be punished. The company will be fined and the directly responsible person will be sent into the jail. So it's quite harsh. Then the most important thing in this part is how we define the directly responsible person. Who is the directly responsible person? So I will hold an example to explain. Assuming you are a senior management in a large multinational medical company, for example, and the company's headquarters sent you here in China to explore the big market here. And when you arrive, your Chinese staff told you that here in this industry in China, we have a casting couch. So they will hold seminars in luxury hotel to invite doctors in hospital. And they will give the doctors valuable gift to ask them to take more medicines on patients from my company. If you ask them, is it legal in China? They will mock on you. Everyone in this industry doing this. And if you don't this, you don't have profits. And no one will refuse the profits. So as a clever French manager, you think, this sales strategy is a little bit weird. So you decide, okay, I will not respond to this issue in future. And I will pretend I don't understand this. Then, after 2 years, your company involves in a bribery case. One patient installed a pinhole camera. Actually, it's from a true story. And the video shows that the salesman of your company gave doctor a packet of cash. And the salesman argued that it's none of his business because his manager asked him to do so. And his department manager said, okay, it's the sales strategy for years in the company. So now the police officers are trying to find who is the directly responsible person in the company. So what do you think? Definitely, the salesman will be one of the directly responsible person because he bribed the doctor directly. And it's really possible that his department manager will be also one of the directly responsible person because he led the this bribery case. But how's about you? Do you think you have the criminal risks? When the police officer interrogates you, you can argue that I have no idea what they are doing. But then police officer will also ask you, why in this 2 years you approved such a high budget to the sales manager without reporting to the headquarters? And between your email, yes, you didn't respond this issue directly, but people can see that they reported to you. And clearly, you know this sales strategy. In this case, unfortunately, I think the senior management may also have a great criminal risks, and he or she might face to the imprisonment over 5 years. So, you know, one of my foreign clients, he told me that in his country, maybe the judge will find the company, but judge will never put the senior management to the jail in this kind of like economic case. And when he talked this to me, he was in a detention house. Yeah. And he also told me that in his country, definitely he will get the bail or probation after paying a sum of money. So what can I say? I think this is the difference between the legal systems. And welcome to China. Yeah. Let's move to our second part. Main phases in Chinese criminal procedure. According to the criminal procedural law, the criminal case has 3 main phases: investigation, prosecution, and court hearing and trial. Because today the time is quite limited, so I will spend more time on the investigation phase because people are easily, feel shocked when the police officer came. And I will try to give you a whole picture that if you're involved in a criminal case, what kind of procedure you will face to. I know in some Western countries, some of suspects will be put into the jail waiting for the trial. It sounds not fair enough because if you don't know whether this person is guilty or not in the future, how can you put him or her into the jail beforehand, right? So in this kind of system, the judge will try to not to put the suspect into the jail. However, in China, we have a place called detention house. And it's different from jail because criminal in jail need to work, but in detention house, suspect don't need to work. So here in China, police officer will easily put people into the detention house in a lot of criminal case. In Shanghai, all the foreign suspects were put into the Shanghai First Detention House, which was in the Pudong area, and now it's in Qingpu district. The most terrible thing for my clients in the detention house is they are refused to meet their families before the trial. Only lawyer can meet them. Besides, most of them didn't know before that when the police officer interrogate them, they are not allowed to be with their lawyer. It's quite horrible for my Western clients. So as their defense lawyer, we will try our best to prepare the case, but still when they face to the police officer, they need to face them alone. So it's quite harsh because, in China, the way the police officer asks the question are very tricky, and most of police officers, I think it's worthwhile. They are quite clever. Yeah. So a common question will be asked, like how long the suspect will stay before the trial. Well, it's a complicated question. So most of time, the investigation phase will take maybe 3 to 6 months. Then the prosecution phase will take 1 to 5 months. Then the case transferred to the court, and it will take several months, maybe over 1 year, even 2 years before the final trial. So if I answer this question, I would say if you're involved in a criminal case, you should prepare at least 1 or 2 years to stay in the detention house. Another question is, as a foreigner, do you have any privilege in the criminal case? And if I involved in the criminal case, can my French consulate help? I'm afraid the answer is no. So if you read this picture, you will see if you're involved in an ordinary criminal case, most of them like involved in an ordinary criminal case. So the procedure is almost same as the Chinese citizen. And the difference is the police will inform your embassy or consulate. The consulate is allowed to meet you, but they will not meet you as often as your lawyer. As I know, the consulate is not able to help too much in the criminal case, and they are reliable, but don't count on them. By the way, as French, you have the right to use your own language when the police officer interrogates you. They will provide French translator. My French client told me the translator is not really good, so he chose English translator. He thought English translator is much better. However, the court hearing and the trial will be still holding Chinese, but you will have the interpreter in the court. So let's move to another topic, exiting, restriction, and deportation. Like Alban said, when you're involved in a criminal case, you are not allowed to leave China. So for Chinese citizens, maybe it's easier to accept because it's our home, right? But for foreigner, sometimes it's really suffering because the criminal procedure, as I said, is quite long. So one example is one of my client. His company involved in a criminal case of infringement of citizens' personal information. The company got some user information to do some marketing research, but some of the user information have some problem. My client was the legal representative of this company, and he had no idea what happened. Finally, the police officer gave him the bail. However, when his dad was almost dead in his country, he's refused to leave China to accompany with his dad. So it's miserable. Another example is one of my clients, and also Alban Houjian, similar example. When she arrived to the airport, she was refused to board in the airport, and she had no idea what was happened. The staff of the airport told her to contact police officer, and the police officer told her that she involves in a crime of hiding crime income because her ex-husband was a criminal of bribery. However, she had divorced with her ex-husband for almost 10 years. And deportation is also a troublesome problem in a criminal case for foreigner. Because if you don't have a Chinese wife, the judge will easily think you don't have a strong connection in China. So judge will put deportation as the supplementary punishment into the judgment. Even if you stay in China for a long time, even you have a house here, even you do the business here, even you have your own company, you are not allowed to go back to China within 5 years. So in some case, our clients told us that they can accept the punishment of imprisonment, but they ask us try to avoid the deportation. So finally, because you can see criminal liability is quite harsh in China, and I would like to give you some practical suggestions. So when you involved in a criminal case, talk to your lawyer as soon as possible. Make an appointment with us. When your company involves in a criminal case, ask your lawyer and make appointment with us. Let us talk to the police officer. Let us do the plea bargain with the prosecutors. It's quite important. And when your staff in your company involved in a criminal case, ask your lawyer. We will evaluate the criminal risks and to decide whether the company shall hire the lawyer for your staff. Because sometimes it's quite a clever way to cope with scandals. And if you feel a little bit weird, I'm not sure whether I involved in a criminal case or not, ask your lawyer, make an appointment with us. We will judge for you. And if you think, okay, my company might have some problems, ask your lawyer to do the criminal compliance beforehand, because we will have the company to check every detail before the police officer can. And when the criminal case happens, because sometimes it's it's not avoidable. And we can say that we have a systematic inner regulation and rules. So at least the company and the senior management, we are innocent. So that's quite important. So that's all. Thank you.
So I swear I did not want it to scare you. That's just the reality. But then how do we mitigate the risk? Because this risk, as I mentioned, they are serious. And as she mentioned, when it happened, people are really shocked. I think most important is compliance. It's people keep talking about compliance all the time. That's true, but it has really to be done. It's not just some paperwork or something to make people happy. It's potentially avoid to have huge fine, to engage your liability and to go to jail in some cases. So that's really important. And establish internal compliance system. I mean, code of conduct, code of ethics, anti-corruption. I mean, all the internal rules of who is in charge of what and what to do, because otherwise it will always be the top management, the legal representative who will have a full responsibility. And the employees at the bottom will create a lot of potential trouble. And the bigger the company is, the more it's risky. Of course, you can have training with your employees, check different issue. You can find also, because I also got sometimes a question, some insurance to cover senior management personnel. If a company is not ready to cover the liabilities they may have. So you can ask sometime in the package, please make sure I have the insurance to be fully covered here. One thing is I really insist is, depending on the regulation, the person responsible is not always the same. So always be clear in your company who is responsible for what and write it down. Have some clear regulation. This is most of the time a failure. When we check and we ask who is in charge of what, people tell us, yes, this person. Okay, where is it written? Where is your employee handbook? Where is your organization chart? Okay, this is organization chart, but where is it detailed and explain who should do what and what's the limit of the scope of everyone? I give you one very simple example, and one issue I see very often. It's look ridiculous, but it's about the CHOP, the seal of the company. Very often, the seal of the company is not properly secured. There is no enough clear detail regulation of how to take care of that and who should, how to CHOP. I tell you one example. I had a case like 5 years ago. One company came to me. They were a bit in distress because they have a lot of clients. They were telling me, okay, their head of the sales left the company. And they find out a lot of their clients came back to them with side letters to the original contract. So basically what was happening is that the sales manager was making a great sale, having high bonus. And she was chopping all the contracts to sign with the client. And she was making some great deal. And after she left, all the client came back and say, and by the way, guys, we have some extra amendment to the contract. And this amendment, they are giving us more advantage, reducing some prices, giving us more elements. And the cost of a product was really high for the company. And what was happening is the legal department has no idea of these side letters. No one has no idea of these side letters. The general manager has no idea of them. The legal representative has no idea of these side letters, because this woman who was the head of the sales, she was going to the office of the legal representative taking the job every day by herself and chopping a lot of documents. No one had idea what she was doing. So keep in mind, the chop is the signature. It has to be clearly protected. You need to have some clear procedure how to chop. Does the contracts been reviewed internally by who approved? Is it in a safe box or is it accessible for everyone? For the record, we consider to sue this woman to say, well, you misuse the chop, you abuse it, you have no right to do that. And actually, there were no internal rules and regulation in the company. So if there is no rule how to use the chop, how do you want to say she has abused the chop? It's impossible because basically the chop was in free access to everyone. So that's just a simple example, but chop, you can be sure, is really the signature of a company. So imagine you let the signature of a company accessible to absolutely everyone in the company, and you have a legal representative. It's like you agree to take really high risk by yourself. So that's really, I insist, have some clear compliance and internal regulations. One last thing, just the impact of social credit. Then we will go over Q&A. Of course, social credit is to punish serious dishonesty, and there is a joint sanction to be imposed to the companies and to the responsible person. But think really of all the trouble it brings in reality. Ban from profession, restriction of taking planes or train to purchase real estate, even it's quite expensive in Shanghai. But education for the kids, I mean, that's really a real issue. Most of the school here, they are Chinese school actually. Even if they have like foreign classes. Prevention of leaving China, but restriction in receiving awards is still acceptable in some cases. I never got a lot so far, but keep in mind how troublesome it could be on the top of all the fine, all the punishment you may have, and even if you don't face criminal issues. So that's it for the presentation. We are here to answer your question. I hope the people online, they could follow properly and it was clear when we speak. Feel free to scan also the QR code if you want. I will add you to follow the form. And Alex, if you hear me, if you can come with your other microphone, thank you. And first, do you have some question from here? Est-ce qu'il y a? Yeah.
A question for Ariel. I'm curious about if in a criminal investigation after a trial or even before the trial, it turns out that the person was actually not guilty and is fully acquitted. Is there any form of compensation provided for by the law for the tension he might have to suffer?
Actually, there are two kinds of how do you say examples. One is if police officer put you into the detention house and after trial, the judge said you are not guilty and they will compensate you. However, to avoid that situation, they will said, okay, you are guilty, but they will give you a probation. And after 1 or 2 years, you think, okay, I just won't go out and I will give up the compensation. And it's more common. So is that clear?
You have, yes. Do we have question online maybe, Alex?
Not yet. No, nothing yet.
So the social credit is happening on we start to see people who lose their social credit and then who cannot take metro and so on. Usually, how does it long? So is it linked to your the result of a case, or is there a standard for after X years or X months you can again regain your credits? What happens for people who lose all their points on their credits? How to get back to a normal life?
You mean the criminal records, right?
Like, I mean, social credits. So people who have lost their social credits, who cannot take the metro, who cannot take the plane, when can they get back their points to again travel again? And
so if you involve in
if you I have some Chinese friends, they lost their points, so they cannot take the metro, they cannot take the plane, they cannot go anywhere. When will they be able to get back a normal life? can they, or we don't know?
Yeah, they can actually. After a while, you will get back the points, and also depending on some action you take, you will get some extra points. But it really depends on the way of life they have. But so far, the thing is for the social credit system, the allocation of a point is not transparent. So you don't exactly know every time you are losing the point and when you will get back some points. So that's actually one of the trick of the system. It's because as you don't know, it's forced you to be very careful every time you do something. But indeed, some people, they have some bad surprise and they didn't know they have lose some points and they realize suddenly they cannot take the plane and they even don't know why. But there is a appeal and internal review system for which you can still claim and explain and reclaim also some points.
Same for the social system. Is it applicable to foreigner the same way as it is applicable to Chinese citizens? Because from what I heard from my Chinese colleagues, even crossing the streets now with the camera, they could be recognized, and that's linked directly to their social security card, and they get the text message right away to say you've crossed on the red light. Is it something that is really applicable to foreigners at the moment, and any other kind of lifestyle? Because I understand for criminal, it's easy to link to foreigners. Is it the same for like any lifestyle? I don't know how you want to call it.
Well, again, there is question. The first question basically is when you're gonna lose some point. When will it happen? And it's not always totally clear, and this may change. So, for example, if you spend your life in supermarket buying alcohol, you may lose some point. But at this stage, is not really clear. What is clear is when you cross out of the line, the street, you will lose some point. And whether or not as a foreigner you will have some issue, most of the system is facial recognition. And yes, your face is in the system of the police, and yes, they will recognize you. How it will affect more Chinese or foreigner is actually not clear because it's too new. But to be honest, I try once in in a APP to tell you how much point you have. I find out I have a lot of low points. I mean, not so much point compared to other people. While I have a very peaceful life. So be clear, like you may be involved immediately. So really, when you see any facial recognition camera and it's everywhere, just respect the rules. That's actually also the goal of the system to make you do that. But if you want to see your face on the camera, how it's look like, you just go to the airport or to a train station. You systematically have at the security control when you give your passport, they will immediately scan you and you will see you in the system. They can see everything. That's also where basically when you commit a crime, they will stop you and tell you where to go. Not just when you leave China, even when you go for a domestic flight, for example.
We had a question online actually. Yes. Who is responsible in case of breach of AOA by the GM?
But that's the GM first. If the GM, well, actually it could be many people. First is the GM, but the GM actually should be also reported by the supervisor if the supervisor does properly his job. And also the directors, if there is a board of director, they should also inform and prevent him. And if necessary, they have to remove the general manager because normally the GM is appointed by the general manager or the executive director if there is no board.
I have a question for Ariel. So in a criminal case, when a foreigner needs a lawyer to defend for him, in your experience, usually they will choose a lawyer whose English is very good, or he will choose a local lawyer who is very good at criminal and plus in a very good interpreter or translator. So which they will choose?
So if you ask me, of course, I would say you should choose an English-speaking lawyer, right? And especially we are quite experienced. And the thing is, because if you find a local lawyer who cannot speak English, he or she might find a translator together to the detention house to meet the foreigner. And sometimes it's really hard for them to find a good translator because you need to know the criminal law and you need to know the French. It's really hard for normal, like ordinary French translator to translate how we translate some, professional words. So I think if you talk to an English-speaking lawyer, it will be easier for us to communicate. Another important part is the cultural difference, because local Chinese lawyer, if they don't have the abroad experience, they don't know what the foreigner care. Like for us, I know that foreigners, they care about when they meet to the police officer, they want the lawyer be with them. But for local lawyer, they think it's quite normal if you are alone to face to the police officer, and they will never tell you the technique to meet the police officer alone. So I think the cultural difference, understanding is quite important too.
Yeah, actually, for us, it's a key issue because we are only one team, and even when we think about compliance issue or potential problem, we consult and we discuss together to think when there would be an issue, how do we try to solve it before it arrives, or what should we think about to avoid it and to avoid it to be criminal case, because we really don't want to go criminal. She would be very happy because she has more work, but for our clients, generally speaking, we really don't want. The good things when we're together, when we discuss about it, is that when it's our standard clients that we advise on a daily basis, we have all the history, we know the people, we know what's happened. We are quite efficient and we can move very fast because again, that's only one team. But if it's just criminal cases, we suddenly receive at once separately, and we don't know the historical situation of a company. We haven't drafted the document. It's always more complicated to solve, and that's again a bit quite dramatic because we have to run after all the elements, even the basic element of a company. Sometimes the article of association, they are never been updated. Basic contracts, they are not well drafted at all. I mean, they are just pieces of paper. And then we have real issue, and it's really tough after to defend the case in criminal situation.
We had another question online. What's the liability insurance for senior management and how does it work?
Well, that's actually the standard liability insurance people may have for the top management of a group. Normally, the group in France will pay for it, and they should cover the top management also of a subsidiary abroad. But that will be financial support. They will pay the lawyer's fees, but not only, sometimes need to be discussed what they will cover more. For example, if you talk about detention house for 2 years, if you have a wife and children and they have to stay here, they have to go to school, but you yourself, you're in jail. I mean, not jail, sorry, detention house. It's not the real jail, but still it's the same at the end of the day. And you don't get your salary. Who is going to pay for them? Who going to support their living? How do you get insured? That's actually a lot of money. And actually, always a key question when we reach very extreme situation. Does the company want to support the employee or not? That's sometimes we, depending on the situation, there are different kind of problematic here. As it has been said before, sometimes it's quite interesting to support the bottom, having to cover and be able to help the top management to make sure it will not reach. Some we also heard and we saw some people the quarter say, well, I have to go on. Here there are some issues also and some tactical things. And also for us, sometimes it depends who is our client. The company is our client or just the individual. Normally it should be better the company. Individual, of course, we can help, but it will be a quite tough situation for this person and a high financial burden. So be insured if you can.
Social credit. You mentioned the app to check on your level.
Yeah, you have some app I think are available, but you can also check online actually sometimes. And I know some people install it even to try before the social credit was established.
What's the name of the app?
I don't know. I don't remember, to be honest, but I can check and give you. Well, if there is no more question, thank you for the people online to have followed us. And for the people in the room, welcome next door to have a drink and forget all this terrible story and eat something. Thank you.